Alright guys, so we are here, best games of 2021. If you haven't watched my most disappointing games of 2021, go over the rules again real quick. Alright, so this one is much simpler. It's just the best games, the games I played, the ones I think are the best. It's not complicated, worst, or most disappointed. These are just the good ones, buy them. Alright, same rules, I have to have played it and reviewed it, so go ahead and throw that same list up from the other video of all the games that we played and reviewed here on this channel, even including the ones that, spoilers, were already on the most disappointing games list. But this one, there's 10, there's not 6. I found that there's 10, and you know, the scale here, I found this in my most disappointing games video, that the scale varies, right? Like number 10 on the most disappointing could have been like a 5, and number 1 could have been a 1, right? Here, best games, my number 10 is probably like a 6, and my number 1's a 9, so they vary. They're not, you know, they're very different, but just want to get that out of the way. So you got your list. These are all the games that I've played, and let's go ahead and start off with number 10. So number 10, we have Aliens Fireteam. Alright, and this isn't something that's groundbreaking. Like I was saying, my best games rankings vary drastically between 10 and 1. Alright, this isn't game changing. It doesn't introduce any crazy new mechanics to the survival horde shooter genre. Alright, but it works. It takes everything that World War Z and Back 4 Blood and Left 4 Dead and all those types of games do, and just changes the enemy types, changes the environment a bit, gives you special loadouts and sci-fi weapons, and a bit more of a story than those games typically do, and it just does it better. Right? It also helps the variety of enemies. Right? Not that those zombie games don't have variety, it's just how many zombie games have you played with a spitter and a runner and a suicider and a heavy and a, you know, and this is different. I'm not saying that those enemy types don't exist, but just the skin on the enemies are different, and that's pretty much the only thing that this does differently from something like World War Z. Right? Mechanically and gameplay wise, it's practically the same. It's just the setting and the skin that's on all of it. And so the only negatives and why it's so, I guess, at the end of the list is it's quite short, and the beginning is definitely the weakest part. Once it starts throwing harder enemies at you and gets to a point where you fight androids and like human type enemies with actual weapons and using the cover system and all of that, and it definitely gets better as you go and the game gets more complicated and more difficult. But that's number 10. Again, nothing amazing. I'd probably give this like a 6, maybe even a 5. It's good, it does what it needs to do. It's something fun that you can probably get, you know, relatively cheap now on sale, and you should probably check it out if you haven't already and you're into that horde survival type genre. But let's move on to number 9. Coming in at number 9 is the conclusion to the recent Hitman trilogy, Hitman 3. Right, and so the only reason this is so, I guess, low on the list is because I kind of forgot this game came out. Now, it might be because it came out at the very beginning of the year. I think it's one of my first reviews I did this year, but it is good. Like, it works. I say in my review, I believe, that it doesn't do anything wrong, but it doesn't do anything crazy new. Right. It takes what Hitman 1 and then Hitman 2, which evolved heavily off of Hitman 1, do really well, and then just brings all of that power to the Series X and next-gen consoles with new locations, and finishes off the story they have going on. Right. Like I said, doesn't do anything crazy, doesn't add any crazy new mechanics, a few new things here and there, just small changes, not that they're really needed. Right. Hitman always really hasn't really been about going all out and blasting everybody away. Well, you definitely can do that if you want to. That, you know, mechanically the games aren't the greatest thing ever, right? It's not the best third-person shooter that's out there, but that's not really the point of the game. It's the open world and the opportunities to take out the targets, and then in the long run, the online contracts that are created by other players. Right, that with just how great the game looks, even now just looking back on the footage from my review, with the ray tracing and all that stuff, it looks great, it looks fantastic. So it's kind of why this game is so high up on the list. And again, like I said in my most disappointing games video, if you want like more in depth of what I think of all these games, obviously go watch the respective reviews for each one of these games. I'm not going to do a 40-minute thing for every single one because we'd be here all day. But number 9, Hitman 3. Let's move on to number 8. So number 8 is Luminous. I think this one's interesting because it pretty much goes against everything I'd ever say in most reviews, right? I'm all about content, what's going to keep me playing, progression, all of that stuff. Here, now that's not the case. Luminous is good solely on the idea, right? Because if you don't know what this game is, it came out earlier in the year. It's on Game Pass, so essentially it was free. No way it works. It's kind of a turn-based multiplayer FPS, right? So, for example, in this game mode, you have objectives that you're trying to steal, right? There's different operators, and they each do different abilities, like speed, toxic gas, rocket launcher, sniper rifle, all that good stuff, right? And so you get, I believe it's like 30 seconds to do your turn, and then the enemies make their turn. But your previous turn is being played out while the enemy is making their turn, and eventually once you've done all of your turns, you have 6 people from each side moving all at the same time, and you're killing past versions and trying to do, it's time travel. It's great. It's really hard to explain, but if you've played it, you know. And so it's a really good idea, and it's executed really well. The only problem with it is just the amount of content, right? There aren't a lot of maps, there aren't a lot of game modes. I think there's 2 or 3. The game didn't work at launch, and I mean, like I said, typically all of this stuff really turned me off from a game, but just the idea, right, that I can do stuff like this, I absolutely love it, right? Like, I mean, you can just do some of the craziest things. So, like, I think it is this match, actually, that I was playing, and let's say that I get the first 2 objectives, but then they end up killing my time variant, let's call it, from my first turn, and now I no longer get those objectives. So now I have to find a creative and new way to kill their first turn so that my original first turn gets those 2 points. And then you just go back and forth, countering off of each other. Now it does get repetitive, and there was a meta to it, right? You'd always use this character first and then counter it with this character, and then counter that with this character and counter that with this character, so you kind of see a pattern every single game. And so that's kind of why it's so high on the list. It's a really good idea that was executed relatively well, but there's just some holes in it here and there, and the amount of replayability wasn't perfect. So number 7, I might get hate for this. It Takes Two, right? And there's 2 reasons why this is so low on the list, okay? This game, if you don't know what it is, right, you're a couple and it's a co-op, you know, typically what would traditionally before online be called a couch co-op story, linear based game, right? And so the only reason this is so low for me is because 1, I'm salty that it beat out Guardians of the Galaxy at the Game Awards. That's 90% of it, alright? And 2, mainly, because it's done better before. EA's done this type of game before with A Way Out. It's a prison escape type of mob boss, police undercover type game, right? And it was about 2 people who become friends, and one of them's a prisoner, one of them's a cop, and blah blah blah, and it has some big twists in it. I won't spoil any of it, but it's really good and has a lot more action, right? Not that this isn't also really good and have a lot of action and is really funny, but I think just A Way Out does it a bit better, and so that's why it's not significantly higher. The gameplay's really good and unique and interesting, and then the story's alright. But overall, I just think that it's done better before. And when you're doing a sequel, it should be the other way around, right? This should be significantly better than A Way Out, because while it's not the exact same game and the tone and everything is completely different, mechanically you're doing a lot of the same things. Number 6, we have 12 minutes, alright? Don't know what this is. Again, a lot of these games are smaller, non-AAA things, and so 12 minutes, it's this top-down riddle mystery story game. It's kind of a point-and-click type game. You go around and just discover things, and it's a time loop, right? And I like me some time loops, so I'm automatically biased, right? For example, one of the first things you learn is that it's going to storm, right? So you use that information to convince your wife that you know that you're in a time loop because you know the rain is coming, or you know that they made this food, or that the flower is doing this, or that someone's gonna knock on the door at this time, or that this thing is hidden here. And so it's about proving to your wife that you know you're in a time loop and finding out why you're in a time loop. Again, not spoiling it, because this game is entirely based on story, right? Where you take Lemnis Gate, that's all just creativity as far as just the idea for the game goes, and then you take It Takes Two, right, where just mechanically you have to design all these intricate levels so that you can force the two people to cooperate. This combines that, right? It has really good storytelling combined with gameplay that is paced well and twisted in a way that works, where this would typically be boring, right? This wasn't a time loop. I don't think that this could have worked. Now, while a lot of people don't like the ending because it kind of just comes out of nowhere, after understanding and diving into what actually happens and breaking it down and thinking about it more, after playing it, I like it a lot. It, it lets you piece things together without handing them to you, right? You have to figure out completely what to do, and you feel smart when you figure out certain things. There's different options. It's great. There's a lot of big names in it. Willem Dafoe is in it, Daisy Ridley, James McAvoy. So it's really good if you haven't played it. Again, one of those games you can probably get on sale about now. It is heavily story driven. So if you're one of those people that your gameplay needs to be top tier and that's what you want to focus on, then this isn't going to be for you. It's all in the story. Gameplay wise, you're just pointing and clicking. But for me, that works perfectly. That's my bread and butter. So number 5 is Outriders, and this was something that I completely dismissed at first. I made a video about how bad it was and how I absolutely hated it, and then I went back and tried it again, played it more, and it was great. It takes everything that Destiny does really well and throws it in there, and then everything it does really poorly and fixes it. For example, my biggest problem with Destiny, both 1 and 2, is the amount of content. Right, you pay $60 and you get like a 10-hour campaign, and then realistic like a 15-hour end game, right? And then everything else you gotta go through expansions, right? It's hundreds of dollars in expansions. Luckily, it's on Game Pass right now, but for the most part, you gotta go through expansions to get all that extra content, all that really cool stuff, or pay for it in a battle pass. And so, with Outriders, it fixes all of that. It has really cool gear, the mechanics, the powers, the abilities, the set pieces, the bosses, just like Destiny has. But it takes it and just goes to 11, right? And it can be a bit stupid, right? There's like vampire bosses and crazy weapons and freaking like you can shoot enemies and have tornadoes spawn on them and stuff like that. The modding is absolutely crazy on weapons and armor, and the game is relatively long. At least for a looter shooter. I mean, again, if you look at Destiny's campaign, it's not more than 10 hours. I don't even think you can play the campaign anymore in Destiny 2. Once they went free to play, I think they got rid of that. And this here, while it's not an amazing campaign, it's at least something to follow and stick to while you're doing the looting and shooting. So, if you haven't played this, again, on Game Pass, and go check it out. You'll probably love it if you like those Destiny-type looter shooter type games. So artistically, at number 4, Forza Horizon 5, and like I was saying, with a lot of these games, they vary. Artistically, this is probably the biggest piece of crap you could come up with comparing it to like Call of Duty, right? It's repetitive as hell. If you count Forza Motorsports, they've done this like fucking 11 times now. But I can't even put it into words, and I had the same problem in my review. Cars go fast. Cars look good. Fun. That is my monkey-brained review of Forza Horizon 5. They don't do anything new. It's the exact same style as Forza Horizon 3, Forza Horizon 4, and I don't remember before that, but it's the same thing, right? You got a big map with lots of shit to do, and you race cars, big cars, small cars, long cars, short cars. You drive them in the mud, on the road, off the cliffs, in the water, on the beach, in the sand. You drift them, you race them, you do stunts with them, and it just, cars go fast, cars look good. That is Forza Horizon 5. It's basic, and it works. It's like Fast and Furious. You're not thinking, they're not doing anything super artistically creative, alright? There's guns, and cars, and that's all it needs. Same thing with Forza. Cars go fast, cars look good. It works, it's fun. This is the first one that I've actually done everything there is to do, not counting like multiplayer content and player custom made races. But as far as just the races and the showcases and the mini stories that they have, I've done it all. It's great. It works. There's like 10 trillion cars in this game or some shit. Everything that works well in every other Forza works well here. Is this the best setting they've ever done? Absolutely not. But it looks great. It works well. It's believable. It's a Forza game. Oh boy, this is gonna piss people off. Top 3. Number 3, Battlefield 2042. I know the game's broken. I know they charged me $70 for it. I know the servers suck. I know the best game mode in the game is literally just old games. But I don't care. This is the most fun I've had in a Battlefield game since Battlefield 4. Now, does it definitely lose points for all this stuff? Yes. This could have been top of my list if just a few things were changed. Right. It needs to obviously, one, have worked at launch. That's a big one. Not charge me $70. That's another big one. What are some other things? If the progression was a bit better, right, there's a decent amount of guns, and there's a decent amount of equipment, and decent amount of specialists, but I said this in my review, it just needs maybe another 15 guns, specialists that are better balanced, and a few more maps. I think this would work a lot better. It gets repetitive, a lot of the maps are broken, but when it works, again, like I say in my review, it is so good. It brings back that Battlefield 3 and 4 when you're holding down a point and there's freaking 50 helicopters shooting at you and you pull out your rocket launcher and you're shooting them down, you're hiding behind your shield and holding the point and you mow everyone down underneath the bridge with your helicopter. It's great. It works well. The hazard zone's trash. Portal, I mean, I can't give you points for that because you're just playing old games. But like I said, when it works, it's really fun. It's probably the best multiplayer game that came out this year when it works. And at this point, at Christmas, the game's been out for a few months now, and they've put out their updates, their content. They're going to be dropping new stuff soon, and so now is definitely the time. It'll be on sale to get into it. So this one was rough. Alright, I spent a long time going back and forth between 1 and 2, and the sad part was, until recently, this was number 1 for a very, very long time. I've been working on this list since Call of Duty came out, and so, like I said, this was number 1. Guardians of the Galaxy is so good, and I don't know if it's because I expected it to be on the other list that it's so good, but it's fantastic. I haven't heard a single bad thing about it. The only bad things I have to say is that the jokes are obnoxious at first, and that's it. The story is great. Visually, it's great. The gameplay, again, in the beginning is weak, but as you develop the characters and you can get their different abilities and figure out how they work together and all of that stuff, great. Level design, great. Collectibles and forms of outfits, great. Music, great. Everything. believe I gave this game an 8 out of 10. The only thing that draws it back from that 10 out of 10 is the pacing in the beginning. And again, the jokes and the banter back and forth does get a bit annoying. But other than that, this game is absolutely fantastic. It has, I think, my favorite sequence and two of my favorite sequences of the year. The other one's another number one game that I almost just said. This is great. If you haven't played it, buy it now. If you like linear story games, go play it right now. You will love this. I compare this to a Fallen Order, but for the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's great. It's really good. Like I said, for a long time, it was my game of the year. But speaking of that, my number one, my game of the year. Number one, my game of the year is Halo Infinite. I would not have guessed this. I did not have high hopes for this game. I was scared of what they were going to do, but it works. All of it. Well, except for one thing, but story-wise, it all works. It's great. I gave this game a 9 out of 10. It deserves that 9 out of 10. It's just slightly better than Guardians of the Galaxy, and that is only because of the name attached to it. Right? Because you have the history and the past, 5 games, this being the 6th in the main story, that build up to this, that is the only reason this is higher than Guardians of the Galaxy. Story-wise, they're both really strong, they work their characters really well. Gameplay, they're both fantastic, but just the nostalgia of the past 5 games and the build-up really is what put this over the top. And they had such a hard job, right? They essentially have to replace Cortana. That's a hard-ass thing to do, and they do it. It works well. The weapon's fantastic. You know, I wasn't sure about her. Didn't think I was going to like her. First 30 minutes, love her. She's great. Master Chief is great. Absolutely fantastic. The action, it's Halo. They do it well. It's great. The gameplay, that's arguably the weakest thing here, but that does not mean it's bad. It still works very well. And something that, again, I addressed in my review, it's something that Halo never really does, and they touch on it here and there, is the emotions, right? I mean, in Halo 4, you have the shot with Chief and Cortana at the end, or just the lines between Locke and Chief in Halo 5 when they're both chasing after Cortana, but nothing to the scale that Halo Infinite has. There's 2 scenes that are just really good character-written moments, and it's fantastic. I love that stuff. But this is my game of the year. Now, the multiplayer, that's a whole nother thing. The open world stuff, it doesn't really work. Like, it's fine, but it needs to be refined more, or maybe taken out entirely. I know they had a plan for a bigger open world, and so I would like to see what that would have looked like, but the open world here, I say in my videos, like a 2015 Ubisoft game, right? It works, but not to the extent that the rest of the game does. It's kind of just thrown in there. But this has been my list, the whole thing, 1 through 10. And so, if you disagree with the list, let me know down in the comments below. If you think this list should be moved around, if you think there's something that I missed, let me know, unless it's Call of Duty Vanguard, and get the hell out of here. But hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think we got one more video before the end of the year, and I'll see you guys on that one.